I often talk about Small Press Comics Explosion, or SPCE, but what was there before SPCE? How about this? And hello, everyone. It's Tom. It's FANzine Live, and I am here to talk a little bit of history with you. We are going to take a look at Self-Publisher Monthly #1, the zine for fandom. And I'm going to put it off to the side here for a moment so that we can go through our little history lesson. And that is that the world of small press comics and the community thrives best, in my opinion, when there is at least one, if not more, really solid news zines, review zines, and the like. Kind of a central hub, a central meeting place. And in many ways, that's happening online these days with Facebook groups and the like. Back in the 80s, and notice this is 1986 here, that was not the case. There was a very popular zine put out by a gentleman named Kevin Collier. I think his was called Self-Publisher. Don't hold me to that. I'm looking, yeah, Kevin Collier's news zines. But I was not in that wave of readers or of self-publishers myself. I was in the small press comics explosion wave. And here is the last small press comics explosion, which was in January 1988, until Tim Corrigan at C&T Graphics decided to bring it back in a slightly different way, a small press creative explosion. And, well, we'll get into that some other time. But anyway, so this is 1986. This is 1988. Corrigan did 17 monthly issues. And so if you back up, basically this Self-Publisher Monthly and this Small Press Comics Explosion happened about the same time. And that's really indicative of what happens in the marketplace for, or it happened in the marketplace for news, for information, for reviews, for advertising, for mailing lists, for all the important stuff that you need to be a good self-publisher, at least needed back in the 80s. And so what I find happens is kind of a expansion contraction of the marketplace. And what ends up happening is somebody like Collier decides to stop doing his zine. And because nobody is doing it, lots of people now try to fill his shoes. In this case, Self-Publisher Monthly, Small Press Comics Explosion. And there probably were others, I'm not entirely certain, but those are the two that I know of at the time. After SPCE went away, there were about 4 or 5 others. Jeff Wood and Wade Busby, Ed Vick, and a couple others did Comics FX out in Seattle. Matt Kanarakis and I did FANzine for a few months. I wouldn't say just a cup of coffee, but we didn't do it super long. And there were a couple others who were trying to do it as well. So it happens that way. It's basically, there are a lot of organizations that try for a while or for a short period of time, kind of shakes out that one, in this case, it was Small Press Comics Explosion, kind of took the lead. I would dare say probably that Comics FX was the successor to Small Press Comics Explosion. And of course, Collier was before that. But during those transitional periods, it's really interesting to see all the different creative minds trying to figure out ways that they can do fanzines. And you actually kind of also see that when it comes to these videos, these review videos, kind of the top-down review videos. I mean, Comics Kayfabe by Jim Rugg and Ed Piskor was pretty much the go-to comics channel on YouTube. And of course, the passing of Ed Piskor, the more or less cancellation of Comics Kayfabe, though they do have a fantastic inventory, and I strongly suggest you take a look at that, led to a few other people trying to do channels of their own. And I dare say I was inspired by Comics Kayfabe to do FANzine Live out of the ashes, I guess you would say, of Comics Kayfabe, because I like talking about comics and zines, and I hope to share that with you. So I thought it would be really interesting to look at this thing called Self-Publisher Monthly, and I have to admit, it's been so long that I actually thought this zine was one of the post-Small Press Comics Explosion zines instead of one of the contemporaries. And so really kind of surprising and kind of interesting. So inside, autobiography on artist Jeff Wood, who's still out there plugging away with his Snow Bunny character in his Appo world that he does. World of Small Press reviews the latest scenes, the news update, and then, of course, New Waver Jeff Gaither did the cover. It was published by a Chris Miller and Tim Belgard. And that's a self-portrait of Tim Belgard. One of the neat things I love about these old zines is not only do you learn about them, but you also learn about their contemporaries and who they were working with at the time, largely out of their advertising. So you can see Wade Busby, who I know from the the United Fanzine organization, but he was one of the Comics FX guys. Kevin Collier, who we were talking about earlier, he kept making comics. He just didn't make a zine anymore. So this is a very nice long editorial by Tim Belgard. Then you can see we've got something here from Dolphin Moon Press with Guest Check Comics. Here's the autobiographical piece about Jeff Wood. Jeff has a wonderful style. And you can see that's his Snow Bunny character, I believe, right there. Pretty cool. So anyway, yeah, there's Jeff. Collector's items. Artie Romero, who I am not familiar with, clearly had a lot of zines, and he had Every Man Studios. And then you can see kind of, this is how we read our news back in the day. And I'll even share with you, I'm going to go back now and open up Small Press Comics Explosion, and this is the news as well. Basically, we would sit there with our typewriters, or if we were lucky, we had a word processor, and we would just start typing all the different releases and news that we picked up over the month or period of time, and we would just put it all down. So we would have to read this stuff, and not having internet, not having a whole bunch of newsletters, we would just pour over these things. So, okay, so this is Brigade Comics. Good to know about. Here's the stuff about American Living. Here's the stuff about Cracker Chronicles. I mean, it goes on and on. Wax Lips changed the title of their latest book from Fanthology to Wax. I mean, they would just do one after the other after the other. And you'd learn about all these things. You'd also get a chance to see some sample artwork of things that are being put out. But as crowded and as difficult to read as this is what we had. I like this one here. C&T Graphics announced the creation of Small Press Comics Explosion, a small press news zine designed to carry on the work of Kevin Collier's FANzine and the Fandom Journal books. Ships out on January 10th, 1986. And he talks about that. He talks about the subscriptions, talks about the advertising. Corrigan adds, the torch is passed, the beat goes on, the network is intact. And then it says here, this publication, Self-Publisher Monthly, Where was it? We'll try to work with SPCE as much as possible, if possible at all, but you are encouraged to mail news to SPCE. So you can see there was a shakeout going on. I also note, if you go over to this one, Fan Attic Press announces that Slam Bang #1 is finally out. We reviewed Slam Bang #1 from Alan Freeman. So there's a little bit there to get a sense of the time frame. Bob Voitko out of Ohio did Low Budget Funnies. Looking at some of the others. Jeff Nicholson with Klutz Enterprises. The Ultra Klutz Saga that we talked about is right here. Trying to find some other goodies. They had a Michigan Fandom Times from the Great Lakes Comic Company. Trying to see what else. Not available comics. Zot 10.5. That's the mini comic that Scott McCloud did with Matt Feazell. Antisocial Man by Matt Feazell. You can see Geriatric Man from Chuck Bunker. We've looked at some of Chuck's work before. And it goes on and on. Antisocial from Tom Roberts. I don't know him. Ben Williams, Media Empire. Okay, Fandom Express. And then we had some reviews. Freeman's Video Blues, or actually by Carrie Lee Baker, but it was published, I believe, by Freeman. Michigan Fandom Times, there you go. Matt Borders, Brian Leonard, and editor Olis Mans. I've heard of Olis Mans. It's been a long time since I've heard about him. Fandom World was published by Jim Main, who is a very long time zine maker as well with his Fizit series. I think we did an issue of Fizit. Antisocial Man. So you can see now we've got some little pieces that we can take a look at and start placing them with the different reviews. Boys and Girls Grow Up. Never heard of that one. Who's the Stuffed Animal Stories by Francis Mao. I always loved Francis Mao's artwork. And then they had some comic strips in the back, along with another ad apparently by Gideon Steinberg, but apparently it was Paul Gilligan's story, Serendipity. And then lastly, Zeke the Geek out of Malden, Massachusetts. So kind of cool. Neat to see what people were trying to do to fill a gap. And you can see that, all I can tell you, as best I know, Self-Publisher Monthly didn't last too long because a certain other book or zine decided to go for about 17 or so issues. So the industry the zine world consolidated, the small press self-publishing world consolidated around SPCE, and Tim Corrigan was off and running for well over a year and a half, almost 2 years. And that is that as far as our history goes. But this is Self-Publisher Monthly. It's a nice looking little zine. Only cost 75 cents. Nice to see. So that's it for now, everybody. That's our classic zine for this time around. I look forward to sharing more with you in the future. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you next time.